Okay, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 4, DECODE Silicon Valley Startup Success. The topic for this week is product market fit. As our yearly agenda, we will start with 15 to 20 minutes topic overview, led by Jane and Ryle, and then we have fair chat with Brian, and also the Q&A session with Brian. This will be around an hour, and the last 30 minutes will be logistics and then breakout rooms.
All right, so today we will be talking a little bit about product market fit, but before we get into that and what that means, we'll start with the 3 core elements of startups. So the first one is team, the next one is product, and the last fundamental element of any startup is the market that they occupy. And before we dive into this more, can I actually have everyone type in the chat what they think is the most important element out of the 3 of them? So just either type team, product, or market, and just say which one you think is the most important. So I'll give you guys a second to do that. Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of team and market. I saw some product at the beginning, but I think it's mostly split up between team and market. And so, yeah, that's really interesting to see. So in reality, the answer is, next slide, please, Serena. That was actually a trick question. The answer is all 3 of them because they are dependent on each other. So that was, as I said earlier, I think you need all 3 of them in order for any startup to work. I deliberately left that out as an option just to emphasize that all 3 are dependent on each other because you need a team in order to build the product in order to go to the market, if that makes sense. Next slide, please. And even more specifically, for a startup to be successful, you're going to need a competent team to build the product that users will actually love and enjoy and use in order to make it to a growing market. So if I were to go back and change the options of the poll, I would have probably included all of the above, which probably would have been closer to an accurate answer. Now, this is an infographic from Forbes that I thought was pretty interesting about the top reasons that startups fail. And this one was conducted a couple years ago, and they basically analyzed about 100 startups, I think a little more than that. And they found that the #1 problem that many startups fail is for a lack of market need. And what that means will be touched on later in the coming slides. But basically, a couple of other reasons why startups fail I want to highlight is that the product is mistimed, or a startup loses focus, or there's bad location. And these are all important, and I decided to highlight them because these are all related to the concept of product market fit. And so now I'll hand it off to Jin to go in depth on what really product market fit is and what we'll be talking about for the rest of the class.
Okay, thank you. So what is product market fit is the term that we've been having a lot. The general definition is the degree to which a product satisfies a strong market demand. You can also think of it as the stage of a startup company where they have successfully identified a target customer and serve them with the right product. In short, you can think of the product market fit as selling, where the product is the sell and the demand is the win. As you can see in the screen, we have 3 different perspectives. And the reason that we have 3 different perspectives here is because I think there's no right or wrong answer. Of course, there's more than 3 perspectives. And it completely depends on the startup team, what the direction is and what their current goal is. So we have something for Mark. He's the co-author of Marcel, which is one of the early reference platforms. And he says that product market fit is about being in a good market. We also have 2 different perspectives from the co-founders at Y Combinator, so Paul and Michael. He said that it's about making things people want. And Michael said, is focusing on the market first. Can we move on to the next slide, please? Okay, so this is kind of a very long paragraph here, but basically it explains that, so you can read it when you have time. So when you know that you have reached the market, the product market fit, you know that. But the customers are buying the products or growing or piling up. One second. And okay. I think this is the slide that you can read later, but I just highlight a few words that from this slide. So I think we can move on to the next one. So this is a diagram that explains the workflow, and I choose this diagram because it kind of matches our semester workflow. So during our first week of the class, we talk about the problem solution fit, identifying the problem that the voice facing that we identified and building the potential solution for that. And the second week, we talk about the MVP, the minimum viable product, and now we are on the product market fit. And that's all about finding the product that fits in the market at the right time at the right place. This is a very crucial step right here, because if you don't have the good grasp of the product market, the startup is bound to fail. And that's why the iteration are very important in any startup. Following one is the customer creation. The main goal in that state is to create demand with the end users and drive the demand into the company sales channel. And the last step is the company building, which is it's the next step, which is building the company structure and the building the organization. I think we can move on to the next slide. So to sum things up, product market fit is all about finding the resonate. One second. The product market is all about finding the resonate between the customer needs and the value proposition that your startup provides. And it's all about writing your assumption down, and it's all about validating the assumption to do the iteration.
Now, let me introduce our guest speakers for today's class, Brian Ma. Brian is a Series X founder who turned investor now, spending the majority of his time as general partner of Iterative Capital and his venture fund. Brian was previously founder and CEO of Divvy Homes, which is a $2 billion valuation, Vive and DECODE, which is a Series C company acquired by eBay. In non-existent spare time, Brian enjoys walks in the park with his German Shepherd border collie mix, right on his motorcycle, and being a degen on interesting crypto projects. And then I will introduce our moderator for today, Gerald Lim, who is a Chief Operating Officer at DECODE, and he is also the advisor for the DECODE class, and he also a Berkeley alumni. And then welcome Gerald and Brian.
Hey, thank you, Serena. All right, Brian, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, awesome. Yeah, nice to have you here on board. Yeah, I think you can see we have an amazing group of students here, and I think for the crowd here, I think we would like to first start off with a little bit of your story, because you have a very, very interesting background, like how you came from a founder side of it to then, I guess, like running an accelerator now, and from US to now focusing on Southeast Asia. So love to hear how you got started with them, your journey along like the different companies, and yeah, how do you become where you are today?
Yeah, totally. First of all, thanks for having me. Love Berkeley. Have a lot of friends that went there. I didn't go there, but great school. I'll do the short version. Gerald, just stop me if you want to like go dig into anything. So the short version is I've spent 15 years of my life now since school starting companies, actually, let me go even further back because maybe it's interesting. So I'll start with college. I was one of those like really weird kids that I went through this like early entrance program. So I skipped high school and then I went to college directly. So was 16-year-old when I went to college. It sounds cool, but it's like not cool at all because everyone else is like much older than you. You're 16, so you can't like drink, you can't go to parties, you can't like do anything. And so what you end up doing is you're just trying to get out of school as quickly as possible. So I was like, okay, trying to finish my degree, get out of school and go do something. When I was in school, I think I was like, okay, cool. What are the types of things I can do to make the like biggest impact in the world? And for whatever reason, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm gonna get an engineering degree and I'm gonna start a business. And so that was kind of like my I don't know, trajectory and goals. After school, I ended up getting really lucky and I joined, I had like a Microsoft offer, a Google offer, and I was like, I don't like any of those. I joined this like no-name startup called Home Auction Web because the CEO was the founder of Expedia. And I was like, I don't care what he works on, I just want to work with him. And so ended up doing that. That company turned into Zillow, which is now a multi-billion-dollar company. And I think I just learned a lot during the like 4-year journey with them, growing from, I was employee number 30 to I think it was like 450 when the company ended. After my Zillow kind of like stint, I was like, okay, I must know how to start a company now. Let me go do that. So I left, did the whole like founder thing, right? So you're like in the basement, you're like coding, you're trying to release code, you're like trying to get customers, you're trying to get your first sale. We didn't pay ourselves, we had no heat. It was just like, I don't know, you're like whatever you guys see in like Silicon Valley, like the Netflix show, right? It was like exactly that. So that was my first company. It took us a really long time before figuring out like what we were supposed to be doing. It was a 5-year journey for me. We ended up raising about $16 million. Very lucky, worked very hard, but also got very lucky. eBay bought the company 5 years later because we had a very, very strong like data science team. And they were like, we don't have any data science in our company. Why don't we acquire the company and then use some of their technology? So that ended up happening. I was still young at that point. And so I was like, oh, originally I was in Seattle. After my company got bought, I was like, I have to start a company in the Bay Area. So I just like picked up, left, went to the Bay Area, and then just tried to figure out how to start another company. I said it was gonna be short. I'm so sorry, Gerald.
No worries, go on. I mean, it's super interesting.
Ended up in the Bay Area. I knew like nobody in the Bay Area. And so I was like, I'm so nerdy. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna write software to meet a bunch of people. So I ended up writing this app. The iPhone had just come out, which basically, easiest way to explain it is like Tinder, but for networking. So was already married, right? Like couldn't go on dates, but I could meet people professionally. And so used the app, ended up meeting just like a whole slew of people in San Francisco who were awesome, and then just built out the network that way. It turns out other people also want to meet people. So I think at its peak, we had probably 500,000 people in the Bay Area all using this at the same time, right? And like meeting everyone. The YC caught wind of this, was like, hey, Brian, do you want to go through YC with it? Ended up going through YC. Company wasn't going to be as big as my first company, so I ended up selling that company. Then I went on this like vision questing journey where I was like, okay, do I want to start another company again? Answer was yes. Started a third company. That company's now a $2 billion company. It's very, very, very. I think I got really lucky, but it was like it just took a ton of work. So that was the 15-year founder journey compressed into 3 minutes. Last year, my company is very, very big now, and so the thing you do when your company's really big is you're basically like planning for your next round or for like a IPO. And so I was like, okay, it's clearly out of my sweet spot. I want to go back to the very beginning. And so last year, raised some money, started an accelerator, and then now I'm just helping a bunch of other founders start their companies. I'll stop there. That was very long, I apologize, but that's the background.
Yeah, but that's like super interesting. Yeah, I mean, one of the areas I know like iterative capital is definitely like in Southeast Asia. A lot of our students here are, I guess, students that are international students across the world. What made you decide to focus on Southeast Asia and not like, I'm guessing because of your 15 years in the US, you probably have like a sweet spot in the US, like you know the industry, you know people here. But what made you go to Southeast Asia?
Yeah, two reasons. The first one was I have no clue how to be a good investor, right? But I know how to I know how to start companies and run companies. And so I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to use my best skill possible, which is like help companies found help founders found companies. And I was like, I'm going to run an accelerator. If you run an accelerator in the Bay Area, like nobody cares about Brian's accelerator, right? They're just gonna like go to YC and like go to, I don't know, any other accelerator out there. So part of it was kind of like nobody would care if I started here. And the other part of it is Southeast Asia is just like really interesting. So emerging markets, not just Southeast Asia, it's like emerging markets, LATAM, maybe the Middle East, Africa, etc. If you look at their growth rates, like every single country is growing at like double-digit, mid-teens, maybe even high teens GDP every single year. The US is growing at about maybe like 3 or 4%. And so what's happening is, and you see this in every single market, what's happening is like more and more people are now kind of like coming up and getting into the middle income bracket. And now they're starting to have disposable income, which means they can pay for YouTube subscriptions, right? They can pay for like online delivery. They can start paying for like all these different things. And so all of a sudden you have like a really, really big need for building kind of like complex, more complex technologies that therefore didn't exist before. The problem is a lot of the founders today are in the US because they have this like massive support network. And so you're not seeing, like you have a lot of problems to solve and not enough founders in these regions. And so it was just like a very, very clear fit for us because we're like, okay, we can make a lot of founders, we can create a lot of companies, and a lot of companies will kind of like come out in these I don't know, few years to become kind of like massive category creating companies. So I think, I don't know, the emerging market space was just like way more exciting to me than playing in the US.
Got it. Yeah. So for people that, there's a lot of student founders here that are thinking of like, I guess whether starting a company in their home country or in the US. Do you have any advice for them? Like how do they weigh between like which country do I want to be based in, or which one do I want to have a market?
Yeah, I think literally, I feel like maybe like 5 years ago, the advice would be like stay in the US. Today it's changed, right? Because like now we're all sitting in a room virtually, everything's global. You can hire people who are remote. It's like totally okay. I think my advice would be, what problem are you solving, right? So it's kind of like, are your customers here? Are your customers going to be elsewhere? What's the exact problem that you know well and that you're going to go solve? There's going to be different problems in the US than the ones that are in I don't know, Southeast Asia or Africa or LATAM. And so before thinking about where to start, think about what problem you want to solve. And then you can go around and be like, okay, how should I locate my company to best solve this problem?
Yeah, and I mean, you brought up a really good point. I think it really alludes to our next section, right? Where we really want to focus about like the problem and also like the product market fit wise. I mean, do you mind sharing like how did you, I guess, find your product market fit, or like how do you even decide that you want to start your companies in those various fields? And I mean, you mentioned about following the founder of Expedia, like was that, I mean, triggered by something else before that, or I guess how do you figure that out, like which area and which problem to solve and all this stuff?
Yeah, lots of questions there. I'll kind of like peel it apart. I think early in your career, you just don't have that many problems, right? It's like you have like college problems. I had like college problems. I had like, I don't know, relationship problems. You don't have that many problems. And so it's very hard to go find these things, right? That are kind of like world-changing problems. It's rare for someone to like be really deep into like banking, right? Or like really deep into like farming or really deep into like water or something when you're in college. And so if you don't have something that you're like super passionate about, that you're like, I don't know, that you're like really angry about like in the world, my suggestion is like go work with someone amazing, right? So go find a company, go just kind of like learn skills in the first kind of like, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years. And then after that, the reason, like, don't just start a company because it's cool, because it's not cool at all. It sucks. Like start a company because you just like really care about solving something. So it might be, I don't know, like for Divvy, right? It was people were throwing money away on rents, and they were basically like not able to buy homes. When you can't buy homes, you don't grow wealth, and there's this like massive kind of like housing affordability divide. And I was like, that sucks. Like someone needs to come solve this or think about it holistically. And so you have to find a problem that you, I don't know, like really care about. And then I think the like product market fit journey essentially is, how are you going to solve it? Right. So like a lot of people talk about these like pivots, but when it's really easy to get lost when you're pivoting on the problem, right? So you're like, oh, I want to solve housing. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I don't know. I want to solve like, I don't know, banking. And then you're like, oh no, pivots aren't that big, but maybe it's like, oh, I want to solve credit cards. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh no, I want to solve like debit cards. Those are like very different things. And so don't pivot around problems. You want to pivot your solution. So you're like, people aren't making money, they're not building wealth. Why is that? How can I go about doing it? That's kind of like your kind of like early journey. I can keep going, Gerald, unless you want to stop me on the product market stuff. Okay.
Yeah, I think when you mentioned about pivot, right? One of I think very common questions that a founder asks is like, how do I decide when to pivot, right? How do I know when it's enough, or when should I double down, or when should I pivot? Like any advice on how founders can make this decision?
Yeah, you need a process. So I'll tell you my process. It's basically, I had basically with my latest company, right, Divvy, I had like a 6-month period where I was like, I really want to solve housing affordability. I have no clue how to do it. You just have to structure it. So what we did was we were like, okay, cool. We're going to run experiments every single 2 weeks. An experiment basically looks like I have a hypothesis, right? So I'm like, let's see, what's a good hypothesis? People don't buy homes because they don't have enough down payment. Is that true, right? What if we gave them the down payment? How would they react? And so you have a hypothesis. You basically try to validate it in whatever ways you want. A typical kind of like no-code solution to doing this is just go talk to like 50 people. With, I don't know, screenshots or maybe like a demo or like designs or maybe just like verbally, whatever, right? And you're trying to answer a couple of questions on whether someone would want to use this product or not. At the end of the kind of like data collection section, you come up with like very quantitative thresholds, right? Of like, okay, would you use this or not? How much would you be willing to pay? If you don't want to use it, why don't you want to use it? Is there something else? And then you kind of like collect all this data for 2 weeks. Then in the next 2 weeks, you're basically like, do I want to keep going, right? Is there something new that I'm trying to discover here, right? And do I want to keep going? Or am I kind of like completely off track and I want to go do something else? And then you're just kind of like repeating that process over and over again. I think the thing I would say is there's no like right or wrong answer. There's 2 things that are very important. The first one is when you start like one of these like explorations, you should just have a number at the end where you're like, okay, if 50% of people say yes, that's success. If 40% of people say yes, I'm going to kill this. You have to like agree with yourself beforehand, because it's very easy to rationalize 2 weeks later to be like, I don't know, like some people want it. Do I want to keep going or not? And so I think that's really important. And then the second thing I would say is like in the early days of a startup, like, I don't know, maybe like 80% of it is like gut instincts. Like people tell you all these things around kind of like, process this, I don't know, like data that or whatever. Like a lot of it is like founder gut instincts. And so what you want to do again is like, you have to have this really, really close connection with the problem, right? It has to be a problem that like really resonates with you. Because if you don't, it's really hard to navigate because when it's someone else's problem, you don't know how to, like, it's hard for you to understand what the right solution is. And so, yeah, I don't feel like I'm telling you guys anything new. You've probably heard it elsewhere. But having your own problem to solve is a really good way to like start these journeys.
Yeah, I mean, it's really like funny because you kind of brought out a lot of elements of like what founder market fit is, right? So in addition to like product market fit, that's like founder market fit. And actually today there was just another session by Felicis, like one-on-one, because they were purely on the topic of like founder market fit. And so, I mean, in your opinion, is product market fit more important or founder market fit more important? I mean, obviously both are important, right? But I mean,
they are both important. I'm now a VC, right? So like I make investments all day long. And I would say at the very early stages of a company, founder is way more important than anything else. And so they almost solve for different things, right? Like product market fit basically is this kind of like weird concept where you're just like, it's like a destination, you're trying to like get there. You're like iterating, you're like researching, you're trying to get to something. Founder market fit to me is, it definitely helps the iteration process, but I think the thing that it helps the most is it helps you stick around. So the like startups are so incredibly hard. Like if you don't have a reason to stick around because you care so much about it and because you, I don't know, you just have like this amazing insight that nobody has, you're just gonna stop, right? You're just gonna like 3 years in, nobody gives you money, 95% of people reject you. Customers are like, I don't know, 90% of customers are telling you how much your product sucks. You're just gonna stop. And so I almost feel like both of those things solve for different things. Obviously you want both of them, but I would, if you were to force me to say one, I think the founder is more important than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I also know, I mean, that most VCs, they actually have both as a requirement, right? Because for the founder market fit, it's really easy to see like if the founder actually has specific insight to the market or not, right? And that's what you are looking for in a VC. Like if the founder doesn't know the market at all, like even though his product is there, but I mean, there are other people that would just catch up to him. And sometimes like, I mean, you could easily tell in the first meeting whether the person even knows his customer, knows any like insights or knows what the customer really wants and how to, I guess, it also adds on to the gut feel that you say, right? Like if a founder has a founder market fit there, like his gut feel will be a little better than someone that has like no idea anything about the industry. Yep. So that's something that I mean, it's a huge takeaway, and I think it's very valuable that we talk about this because I think a lot of the students here, they are on this journey where they're still exploring which industry they're in, or they might not think that, oh, there's a problem here, but am I really the right one to solve this? I think that's what we have to think about as founders to get funded and everything like that. Yeah, just like to change gears. Okay, so like what are some of the essential questions that founders should ask, either like their potential customers or when they are doing those research that you talked about earlier? What is like top few questions that they should definitely know?
I think the most obvious ones for me is, would you buy this? Right, like, would you buy this? How much, if I sold it to you right now for X, right, like $50, would you pay me right now? If you, again, like I might be just telling you guys things you know, and so I'll go much faster. the would you pay me is the easiest signal to tell whether someone wants your product or not. And a lot of founders have this thing where they're really scared of asking people because their product sucks. Most of the time the product sucks. So you're like, you don't want to get rejected, et cetera, et cetera. You're like saving your own, I don't know, ego from getting hurt. And so you kind of like miss these signals. And so, yeah, would you pay me? How much would you pay me is the most important thing. And then I think the thing that a lot of people don't do that well is what you want to do is you want to learn from the people who say no, right? So you want to go to, I don't know, if you went to 100 people and 95% of them say no, it's more important that you understand the 95 no's than like 5 yeses. Like, I don't care about the yeses, I care about the no's. And so you want to ask the right why questions, and you kind of like want to peel and every product's gonna be different, but you want to ask the why questions of why did you say no? The other thing that I think most founders kind of like screw up on is they think about all the like 95 people that say no as like one category. But really what you want to do is you want to segment them, and you want to figure out kind of like, do certain people say no because of X, right? So are they college students, and so this doesn't resonate with them, versus are they, I don't know, college students and immigrants, so that doesn't resonate. So you're like looking for patterns. And then if you have a built out product already, there's a million other ways to segment, right? So it's like, okay, if they got to my 5th page and they like didn't go, they like dropped out, why is that? If they came back a month later and then they like reactivated themselves, why is that, right? And so what I kind of like encourage entrepreneurs to do in the very early days is just segment your users, really understand who they are, and then give them like a, I don't know, like a set of questions to understand why. Again, the questions will be completely different based on the product, but that's the framework for thinking about how to understand your users.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, for sure, I think we want to like understand the users better. You mentioned a little bit about like whether they are willing to buy or not. What's your advice on like, I guess, pricing, right? Because there are different schools of thought, and I think one of like some founders are like, okay, I don't have anything ready, and like the entry price, I need kind of like a cut the market kind of thing to make it lower price. And then some founders are, oh, I want to price it at the price that I want to sell it at, right? Because otherwise, like we have to get paid. And then some are like, oh, it's totally free, and then I'll charge later. It's like a freemium model. So how do you, I guess it's more like, what's your advice on like for founders deciding on how to price a product, especially at the early days where they're trying to get users?
Yeah. Advice number 1, price it 2x higher than you think it is, than it should be. And then advice number 2 is, there's actually a ton of research on this. There's like 3 pricing mechanisms. I'm happy to send like resources afterwards for like how to think about this. The way I would do it the most is like a lot of times when people are buying products, you're an alternative to something, right? So you're an alternative to like an Excel sheet, or you're an alternative to, I don't know, Uber was an alternative to taxis, right? And so the easiest way to think about it is like, okay, how would they think about my product? What would they anchor the price on because of something else? And then match it or go higher. If you end up pricing your product lower, a lot of times people have this thing where you're like, oh, it must be a cheaper, crappier version of something. And so they end up just devaluing what your product actually is. I think in the early days, again, like a lot of times founders are just trying to save their ego by not like charging a lot and getting rejected. But I think you'll be surprised if you price your product fairly and then also kind of like at a premium, how many people will start buying it. And it's okay if the amount of people that start buying it is small. You just want to start the like iteration process of learning from pricing products, or you want to start the iteration of learning from people that reject you. So yeah, that would be my advice. Price to alternatives.
Is that also the same for like, I guess, consumer apps, right? Like I know B2B sales or whatever, it's very different from consumer. Like, is that the same strategy used for both kinds of products?
Consumer apps have this really funny thing, right? Where you're doing like engagement accounting. So you're like every single day, right? Every single week. I feel like you guys all know this, but I'm just gonna repeat it. The things that end up mattering is how many new users I get, what's my growth rate, what's my retention rate, right? My like D1, 5, 10, etc. And you want to hit kind of like certain benchmarks for all consumer apps. And so rather than thinking about like, I need to price my product, whatever, like you're already getting really good signals from your engagement retention data. And so again, the reason why you're pricing your product and selling is because you want feedback on how to improve. Consumer apps will naturally have this feedback mechanism already. And so you don't necessarily need to charge at the very beginning. One thing I think that most founders like don't understand is like the how much you can charge per CPM, right? Or per like CPA or per, I don't know, CPC or whatever. It's like a very, very well-known kind of like math equation now. And so engagement metrics will translate to revenue. And so the answer is no, you don't need to like immediately charge when you're trying to build something really engaging.
Got it. Yeah, that's really helpful because I'm sure, like, I mean, as a college student, I remember like most of the people would not think of like the B2B angle, right? They would think about consumer because they are known to that world. So I'm sure this is very relevant for a lot of people in this audience.
Hey, so, Gerald, Lucy has a question. Do we want to take Lucy's question?
Yeah, I mean, so Lucy's question is like, how do you identify a lost cause, be it a feature or even product versus something that just needs a bit more iteration? I think we went through a little bit of it earlier, but maybe you could add on more to be more specific in the case.
Yeah, I think my quick answer is give it a couple tries. Like give it 3, 4, 5 tries. Don't go like over, like don't over index on it. But a lot of things don't work out on the first try, right? So you want to do some. So you're like, okay, what if we did this? What if we did this? What if we did this? I feel like once you get to the like 8th or 9th or 10th try, then you should be like asking yourself whether you're like going up the wrong mountain and you should be doing something completely different. And so I think there's kind of like a sweet spot for how many tries you want on a certain feature or product.
Yeah, and it goes back to your matrix, right? Like setting the expectations there, like having a goal first, and then do the whole process thing that you mentioned earlier.
So really quick corollary to this is you have to try things really fast. So if you can try something in like a day versus a week, you just learn so much more. And so if you can get in like 4 or 5 iterations within a week, then you're learning much faster and you're building things, you're improving things much faster.
So I mean, following on that as well, right? Because let's say you change something within a day or two. Is the changes really that significant enough to be noticed within a day or two? Yeah, what's your opinion on that?
You can tell after you release a product, you can tell probably within 3 days what the majority of people are going to say about it. So I don't know, typically, right? Like you'll see your analytics and then your analytics will kind of like dovetail into some kind of like saturation points within like 3 or 4 days. And so most features, especially if they're like relatively small and then relatively like consumer, you can tell early. There are things you can't tell for a really long time. One really good example is we buy people homes, right? And then we try really hard for them to buy it back from us 3 years later. And you just can't tell because the contract is like 3 years later. And so there are very, very long experiments that shouldn't be experiments, right? And you guys get it. You want things to be short.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can't be waiting like 3 years by the time like your company is either like value as like a unicorn or like it's like closed down, right? As a startup.
Sorry. I have so many thoughts on these. When you're in that situation, what you want to do is you want to go up funnel, right? So you want to find more people to get you signal earlier. So either find more people to go through the funnel or find higher level signals, right? So higher level signals would be, are people paying on time for us, right? It's like, are people paying on time every single week because they want the home so much? right? Or like, are they taking care of the home because they want the home? So you want again, like early signals on whether your hypotheses are right or not.
Great, that's really helpful. I mean, I'm sure a lot of this audience like, oh, I never knew about that. Like, I'm sure you have given a lot of insight to those people here. One thing I have in mind is also how are things different? I mean, obviously your companies, you have achieved product market fit. So how are things different before and after product market fit? Or like, what should you focus on? And what skill sets do you need?
Okay, I don't know where this came from, but it's like the best analogy for this. Pre-product market fit, it literally feels like you have like a giant boulder, right? And then you're like rolling this boulder uphill and you don't know if the hill's the right hill and you're just rolling a boulder. You can't see anything. It's just like really hard. Every single day is really hard. And so you're like constantly fighting fires. You're constantly having to hustle. You don't get any sleep. I don't know, your wife hates you. You have no more relationships. Your friends are like, why don't you come to my birthday party or this, like, whatever, right? It's just like really hard. After product market fit, it literally feels like the boulder's like rolling downhill and you're chasing it. And it's still very hard, but you're just like chasing the boulder. And so like what this looks like is your demand just goes up and you're like, I don't know why. Like, I don't know where these people came from, but like every single week I do nothing. And like more people come and more people want a product. And then what starts happening is then like your support lines get like plugged, right? Because like there's bugs everywhere and then people aren't happy. You can't service like 1,000. You knew how to service like 10 people, but you don't know how to service 1,000 people. And so all of a sudden you're just like hiring like crazy. Everyone's trying to fix stuff. Everyone's trying to go as fast as you can. You're like trying to shift software in like hours instead of days. And you're just like chasing the boulder downhill. It's like night and day. It's very obvious if you have like product market fit versus if you don't. Sorry, to add one more thing, I would say my first company actually never had product market fit. It kind of like felt like we were kind of at the top multiple times, so we never kind of like chased the boulder downhill. If we had it, we would have been able to sell the company for way more than eBay gave us money for it. So.
Got it. I mean, yeah, that's super helpful. Like, I think that energy, actually, I've heard like different iterations of that. Like, people just like, yeah, you definitely know when you have product market fit or not, and like your life is very different. Probably skill sets you need as well, right? Like one is like in the early days you have like different kind of skill sets, and then like it's more like reaching out, I guess networking, or I guess like sales kind of thing, or like I guess research. And then after product market fit, your skills are like operation, because you need to make sure that things get done, right? You kind of like ditch your customers or like betray their trust or something like that. So yeah, so definitely a lot of skill sets. And how do you suggest founders, I guess, upskill themselves along this way?
Yeah, I think it's not hard to run into things when you're building a company. It's not hard to run into things that you have no clue how to do, because you'll hit those roadblocks probably every week. And so the easiest way to like learn how to do it is just try, right? Like try as hard as you can, go figure out solutions, et cetera, et cetera. If you're like constantly hitting roadblocks, the advice I have for people is like, you have to build your support network around you. So for two reasons. One is there's tons of founders who are struggling and going through the same thing, right? So there's like product issues, or marketing issues, or fundraising issues. Everyone's going through the same thing, and someone would have made a breakthrough somewhere. And so you just want like a massive support system to help you kind of like get through things. And then the second kind of like semi-related thing is you want a support system for just like emotional support, because it's so incredibly difficult. And if it's such a lonely journey when you're going through it. And so both of those things, kind of like on the expertise side and on the emotional support side, is important. I would say one other thing, like pre-product market fit, a lot of times you're just trying to learn pre-product market fit skills, right? You're trying to learn like, how do I navigate? How do I market? How do I iterate in product? All that kind of stuff, right? Post product market fit, you're trying to learn operational skills, but more than that, you're trying to learn like build company skills. So all of a sudden, like your skill set needs to be like leadership, communication, hiring, firing people like is the worst thing in the world. Alignment, management, vision, right? Vision casting, mission. And so it starts being very, very different. But the support network in the system is the same. You just end up learning different things.
Got it, got it. I know there are a few questions coming in. I do have one last question. It's like a main summary kind of thing. And then after that, we're opening up to the floor for any of you to ask your questions there. So my last question is, what are, I guess, some of like the top few must not do's for founders before they have product market fit? Absolutely must not do.
Okay, some really good ones. Don't raise a lot of money. Like when you go raise a lot of money, you have to like spend that money really quickly, and you'll just start spending money on things that don't matter. And so raising a lot of money is probably not a good idea at the very early stages. The second thing is basically like building forever and not releasing it to customers. So if anything takes longer than, if anything that you're trying to validate takes longer than a month, you're probably doing it wrong. So build things for a month, I don't know, build mockups for a month or whatever. Like you have to consistently be getting feedback, or else you're just not learning. You're like building stuff that nobody wants, right? And so I think that's probably the second thing to avoid. And then I think the third thing to avoid is like really get to know your co-founders well, and like make sure you guys work well together, because a lot of times companies fall apart because of the co-founders, not because of anything else. And so having kind of like a very good relationship with your co-founder in whatever ways, right? Like literally just like do offsites and go camping together. Like it doesn't matter what you do. Like you need to like you need to like really get to know each other, and that's a really big part of the company.
Got it. Yep. I think, yeah, that's it from me. I would like to open it up to the floor. I mean, there's 3 questions there. Maybe you could take that first, and then we'll just like let anyone just raise your hand, and then we'll just turn on your video and stuff like that. So I think one of the questions from Zihang is, what do you think about the future of freelancing?
I think it's the future. Like it's so obvious to me that like we're all capable of so many things. Like people can do design, they can do like product, they can do marketing, they can fundraise, etc. I really think if we kind of like continue down this road, there will be people that do multiple things and possibly for multiple companies at the same time. And freelancing is cool because you get so much like autonomy. And I'm sure everyone, because you're all mostly in the Bay Area, is following like the creator trend, right? Where it's like the people who make things, not just like content, are the ones that are now, I don't know, have more leverage and have more power, because now you have these like platforms that exist. And so freelancing here to stay. I think the pie is going to grow, and I think a large majority of people will be freelancers in the years to come.
Got it. Next question. How do you set the goals for the team of your company, like yearly, monthly, etc.?
Yeah. So when you raise money, a lot of times your goals are, how do I raise my next round? Just in venture companies, right? And so a lot of times you're like, okay, cool, I just raised my $10 million Series A round. How do I get to my like $40 million Series B round? And then you're just back solving. So what you want to do is you're like, okay, companies around my stage, what GMV do they need to hit? What number of homes do they need to hit? Like, are they in 5 markets versus 1 market? You're kind of like, okay, what does my end goal need to be? With the end goal, how you figure out that end goal, 2 ways. The first way is like, when you're early, people expect you to grow like crazy, right? So your like top line KPI should at least like 10x or something per year. And so if you have no other input, you need to be like 10xing a year. The other way to get input is you just talk to all the founders who have done it before and the founders who are doing it now. and you're like, okay, cool. When you raise your A or when you raise your B, what were the benchmarks? You're just like benchmarking against other people. And then from then on, it's really easy, right? It's like, I need to get to like $2 million with like X number of users. Then you just work backwards and you're like, okay, cool. What do I need this quarter? What do I need, Q1, Q2, etc.
Next question. Any tips of getting your company to the chasing the boulder point?
Yeah, work really hard.
That's a pretty broad question.
Literally, it's like two things. Two things matter. One is like you work really hard and you just do like insane, like hustly things, right? I literally like flew down and like knocked on my customers' doors so I could like go talk to them. So just like incredible hustle is what you need at the very early stage. And then second is you have to talk to customers. Like figure out a way to talk to customers daily because that's like the lifeblood of figuring out how you're building stuff that other people want to buy.
And I think from Tony as well, this question is kind of a little broad. She says like, what skill sets are the most important for starting a successful company? I think it's a little broad, right? Because like, it's like, I mean, what do you define as success and at what stage you need different kind of skill sets, but any general, I guess, comments, advice?
I think the one skill set that's like really important is, it's kind of weird, but storytelling is really important. Storytelling and maybe sales is really important. And the reason why is because you're constantly just like convincing people. You're trying to convince investors, you're trying to convince people to join you, you're trying to convince co-founders, so you're trying to convince customers. And so being able to like sell in a very kind of like not aggressive, kind of like relational way, where you're almost like a consultant. You're like, okay, cool. I'm trying to solve like this person's problem, whether it's like an investor or a customer, or whatever, is probably kind of like the number one like umbrella skill I would have. And then the second one, obviously, because most of you will be building technology companies, is technology. Like someone like actually needs to be able to build stuff that's like actually software, right? Not just kind of like this like no code prototype that does random things. Yeah.
Okay. Next question by Anton. Once you have a group of first customers, you can run experiments. I guess like the question is more like, how do you get the first group of customers for you to run experiments? And various companies.
Friends. Like again, the early days are pure hustle, right? So it's like, okay, go to your friends. Okay, my company, I feel like my company is a bad example because it's like people that need to buy homes. Actually, here, let's just take it. People that need to buy homes, right? So I'm like, okay, cool. The first thing I did was like, I probably have, I don't have that many friends. I probably have like 50 close friends, not even close, 50 not close friends. And I'm like, okay, I tap all of them. I'm like, does anyone need to buy a house? You'll run on that really quickly. And then you have to go ask them for their friends to be like, okay, does anyone need to buy a house? You can probably get to like 100 people that way because it's amazing how many people know other people. That kind of like, once you start asking, it's amazing how many people have the same problem. And then beyond probably your first 100 people, then you just have to go figure out where do those people exist? Like, where can I find people who want to buy homes? Then you just go down the list, right? You can get them from real estate agents. You can probably get them from like, I don't know, churches. You can probably get them from maybe like direct mail. You can get them from like how to buy home forums. And so you have to go down the list of these channels of your target user.
Yep. So next question from Damien. You mentioned it focus on startups in Southeast Asia, and it's currently building an ERP for small business in Singapore. Yeah, I'm from Singapore too. It's now in the initial stages of simple design, limited features, and few bugs. He's afraid that because Singapore is a small market, by releasing the product early and test hypothesis, can actually give its ERP a bad rep, and because it's a small industry. So what's your advice on finding the balance between customer satisfaction and testing hypothesis?
Yeah. Wow, Damien, you must be working on something like really cool. Yes, it's like so detailed.
He can pitch to you, and he can pitch to you because obviously, like, you guys are based in Singapore.
Yeah. My advice here is you only need to find 5 people that love what you're building. right? And so in the early days, just don't worry. Like you don't need to worry that much about market size. You don't need to worry that much about, I don't know, the like the 1,000th customer not liking you. Just try to get 5 people to like you. And then once you get the like 5 people like you stage, especially if you're doing like a B2B or like an ERP product, then you can go to the next stage. So I play video games a lot in college. And so the way I'd like to think about this is you need to fight the like level 1 stage boss first, and then you fight the level 2 stage boss and the level 3 stage boss. So right now you're fighting level 1. So don't go too far yet. These are things you can think about later.
Got it. All right, next question by Florian. What market do you think will grow the most in the next 10 years?
I'm really biased, but I'm probably going to say crypto.
Me too. I was like, definitely blockchain, right?
Yeah, it just, I feel like it touches everything in the world. And so, yeah, I'll go with crypto.
All right. Next question. Do you think it's required to work in or found a startup before going to an investor side, like a VC or accelerator? Or what experience from your time in startups helped you most at Iterative?
Yeah. I think my advice would be you want to have some operating experience before being a VC. I have lots of friends who are like investment bankers that go to VC that kind of like regret not having operating experience, and then they'll like leave VC, they'll try to get operating experience, and they'll come back. So it's definitely possible, but I think at some point during your career, you definitely want some operating experience because it's just much easier to like empathize with founders. And so you don't have to start with operating experience and then be a VC, but at some point in your career, you'll want to get it. So might as well start now. Second question, what experience from your time in startup helps the most? I think when you're building a startup, you just fail a lot. Because you don't know how to do things, you do things and they don't end up working. People hate, like random people hate you because you're not a good manager, or you're not a good leader, or like all those things, right? And so the thing that helps the most about being a VC is like you failed a lot, and so you can empathize with how hard the journey is for other people, and then you can help share at least like what you've gone through with them. And so yeah, I think it's the failures that help the most. Kind of weird answer, but that's what it is.
I do agree with you. I mean, like, I think the empathy is the main one, right? And that's how I guess like Andreessen started, right? Because how they became so big, just like the founders were actually founders.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know, I've been thinking about this one a lot. Maybe I'll share with you guys, is like a lot of founders, me included, it took like 12 years, right? Before founding and getting to the unicorn level. And you're basically, honestly, mostly like failing for like 9 years straight before. And you'll see this with like all these like unicorn founders, is most of the time they're just like doing things that every single day they're like, am I doing the right thing? Should I go work for Google? And so it's a very long journey to, the expected outcome is very low. So you have to love it. You have to love it.
Yeah. And that goes back to like the whole founder market fit thing, right? You have to love the game, I guess, the startup game. You have to love the industry because it's like a long haul. It's not like, I mean, even in VC as well, like it's a long haul because you only get your returns in like 10 years or something like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. It's definitely a long haul, but I think that that was slightly different. Like now being on the VC side, it's like it's so much easier. Like running a company. On the VC side, it's like it takes a really long time to know whether you're doing a good job or not. But on the founder side, you know immediately you're not doing a good job.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. All right. Next question. What do you recommend as first steps after recruiting a team and developing a startup idea? I mean, I don't know if you should, I mean, it depends on who you're recruiting a team, right? I don't know if like recruiting a huge team is even a good idea to begin with, right? When you're still developing the startup idea.
Yeah, Tony, I would maybe like go back. My biggest recommendation is just make sure you're working on the right thing. So it's less about like recruiting. It's more about like is this a problem I really want to solve? Is this an actual problem? Does my solution kind of like work for this problem? And then always have that in your mind. And then you can go like recruit a team and do stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it just occurred to me like a following question is like, how, I guess, like at what point do you think spending marketing dollars should be incurred? Yeah.
Yeah. Spend marketing money to learn. So like for me, it's like, okay to do it on day one, right? Because what you want to do is you want to, my thing is like talk to customers every day. And so if you can't find customers to talk to every day, spend money to go find customers to talk to every day. So you're not spending money to like grow like crazy, because most of the time people will come, they'll look at your software, they'll download, they'll leave, and they'll never come back again. You're spending money so you can book 3 to 4 customer calls every single day.
Got it. Chun Zhang has a question, and he says it's kind of long, so he raised his hand. Yeah, go for it.
Hi, Brian. So I have a question. So I heard a lot of people trying to build software companies or apps, but I have an idea in terms of hardware design. So let's say if my customers are really hard to, you're really hard to get in touch with the customers. Let's say if it's an athlete, they have a big managing team on top of them, and basically you cannot get in touch with them. How do you, at least get some product feedback from these kind of customers?
Yeah. Are you selling to like very professional athletes, or could you solve the same problem with college athletes or high school athletes? Like,
well, yeah, you can kind of do so, but it's more like a, let's say it's more like a device that helps the managing team that's managing the athletes to do analysis on their body temperature or whatever they're doing when they're moving. So it's not about the athlete, it's more about the people.
Okay, got it. The way I would test it is I would directly reach out to those people, and then I would give them whatever your solution is. And if they're not responding to you at all, that's already a signal that they don't need what you want, or they don't need what you're building. And so the most, like, people will talk to you if you're solving a problem that they actually have. And so yeah, get them to talk to you. That's the advice. Like, again, like Brian has a lot of like, Brian has, I don't know, I get like 500 emails a day. It's insane, right? But like, of the people that cold outreach to me when they're solving a problem that I have, I will go talk to them. And so no one's unreachable.
Okay. Another question, I guess it's adding on top of this. So let's say if the hardware needs time to build, and then I already have the interest in the customers that you just mentioned about, what time should be the latest time to have this thing rolled out? Is there a definite time span for this, or there's a general time, say, let's say at least after half a year, this thing must go out, or otherwise people will lose interest?
Yeah, I mean, hardware is really hard, right? Because we have multiple hardware companies where they have to like produce the thing, they have to like mold it, they have to like assemble it, and they have to like test it, all that kind of stuff. It just takes a really long time. So I think just don't expect it to be short. The advice I would have is, again, make sure that people really need the thing you're gonna build before you like start prototyping. The trick with hardware is do prototypes, right? And so you're testing other things. You're testing, okay, is this like too heavy? Is this too light? Is this, I don't know, do the sensors work? So you're like piecemeal testing certain things before the final thing that comes out. But yeah, you want to like separate it as much as possible to do your initial tests. I don't know if that was what you were, did that answer the question?
Yeah, it's definitely helpful. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Awesome. Another question by Josh here. How do you separate profitable investment opportunities from other opportunities presented to you?
Yeah, I mean, this one's really hard because companies lose money all the time. Or sorry, not all the time. Like, most venture companies will probably lose money for 6 or 7 years, right? As they're like growing rapidly. And so most companies will just die and be unprofitable. So how do you separate it? I think it, again, like comes back to you're not looking for profitability. You're looking for a founder that has some insight about the world, where they're solving something that like a lot of people need. And so the closest thing to what you're talking about is you're looking for very big TAMs, and you just need to convince yourself that the market at some point is going to be really big. And then you just like trust, right, that it's going to become profitable at some point, and you'll be able to manage your prices with your cost of producing the service or good.
Got it. Yeah, I think that is it from the questions on the chat. Oh wait, there's one more call. You talked about crypto earlier. What part of crypto do you like the most at the moment?
Yeah, Anton,
yeah.
please work on crypto things. Okay, my big thing now on crypto is crypto is one of these things that like has touched way more industries than literally anything I've seen in my life. When it first started, it disrupted just like money, right? So you can like program money, and then it started disrupting like Wall Street, right? Like disrupted New York because you're able to like DeFi is this really big thing. You can now lend against it. People, I don't know, put collateral against like other random derivatives. So it disrupted Wall Street. And then within the last like year and a half, it disrupted like Hollywood, right? All of a sudden you have like NFTs and media and like all this stuff. And like, I don't know, it's just like crazy how much stuff is happening. And then it disrupted Silicon Valley because like all of these developers are now building like new infrastructure on like how Web3 or the internet works. And so it's just, I don't know, the type of stuff it touches is massive. Which one of these is going to be the most important? I think they all are. Like 10 years from now, like all of these things will pan out. Which one's going to happen the earliest? I feel like the like DeFi space is probably going to happen the earliest because it's already happening, right? The like disruption of banks, and because I don't know, people are like actively like transacting now on the space, but who knows on which ones? I don't know. The moment. What space in the crypto are you watching the most right now? Are you looking at token or I buy tokens mostly to follow projects. So it's less about, I don't know, flipping and investing, all that kind of stuff. I just want to follow the smart people doing interesting things in the space. So that's what I do with crypto. And
oh, wow, there's a lot of people that are interested. It's like,
I'll talk to you. I'll reach out to me. I'll talk to you later about Polkadot and random other things.
Got it. I mean, like, it seems like, I mean, apart from crypto, like, does anybody else have questions? Right. I mean, seems like there's, oh, wait. Let's see, what's the question? Oh, Abby is interested in crypto specifically in terms of its effect on assets, like digitalizing physical assets and making them more manageable. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's gonna happen. I wanted to start my my housing company first as a crypto company to fractionalize like physical assets. Yeah, I think it's gonna happen at some point. I don't know. I can't see like the steps though to happening because it's so far away. But at some point, I think it'll happen.
Oh, another one. It's more like career related.
Andrew, I don't have an MBA. You don't need an MBA to build a startup. You just have to learn on the job.
I think it's more like, I guess, how do you build your network, right? Because I think in MBA, the value add there is probably the network, not so much the courses. Maybe the degree itself, like the step of approval, right? Like if you're coming from Harvard or like the top tier MBAs versus like other like random school and MBA or even no MBA, people see you differently. But apart from the branding and network, yeah, I don't really see much other value add. So how would you advise people to grow their network?
Yeah, meet someone new every day. There's like meet someone new every day. And then I think the second piece of advice is just do interesting stuff. Like when you go do interesting stuff, other people will be interested and it'll naturally attract other people. right? So it honestly does not matter what it is. So you'll attract the right people when you're doing interesting stuff. But yeah, networks help. These days, there's networks like everywhere, right? You can join, like there's a million Slack groups. There are tight Berkeley networks. You can probably hit up some Berkeley alums. They'll put you into some other random network. We hire a lot of MBAs and they're really, really freaking smart. So no, if you want to do an MBA, go do it. Like it's value add, but it's not necessary to start a company.
All right, next question. When do you know if it's the right time to increase the team?
When you have money.
Or when you're like really, really struggling, right? I guess like you have not enough time and there's too much orders and stuff like that.
Yeah, like literally, right? Literally the mechanism is you raise money and then right after raising money, there's about a 6-week period where all you're doing is hiring. And then you raise another round and then another maybe like 6 to 8 week period where all you're doing, like 100% of your time is on hiring. And then it dovetails to maybe like 10% time. So you're most likely you're always hiring, but really it's like right after a fundraise.
All right.
Raphael,
Tony,
his hands raised. Does that get?
Oh yeah, yeah, sure. Wait, yeah, Raphael, go for it.
Cool, thank you for giving me the space. Brian, I just had one quick question. I'm interested in the IB and PE industry, but just as a stepping stone to the VC industry. As I just would like to eventually become an entrepreneur. Would you say that IB experience or PE experience, for that matter, are usually relevant to the VC space, or would you say that the VC industry is usually looking for someone with different experience?
I've never been an investment banker, right? I just have friends that like work their asses off as investment bankers. And so I'm probably the worst person to ask about this. My 2 cents is investment bankers tend to be very good at certain roles in certain companies. Right now, they're kind of like, maybe like a head of capital markets at fintech companies is like the one that I'm thinking about the most. And so you'll end up, if you go down that route, you'll end up joining a company probably at a later stage, right? So like I don't know, Series A stage, Series B stage. I have investment banker friends that have started companies before. They end up starting capital intensive companies, right? Ones where you have to raise tons of debt or like tons of equity because that's their core skill. I wouldn't consider it as like one of the like majority paths, right, to starting a company. On the VC side, I think it ends up the skill set translates much better, right? Because it's like the finance skill set. It's like strategic finance, and so it's much better for that to go into VC. The thing I would say is like you end up having to get the operating experience again sometime anyway, and so. But I wish I had done investment banking actually more in college. So I think it's a very viable path, but those are the considerations.
Got it. Thank you so much for your answer.
Yeah, in addition to investment banking, I mean, the other common route is strategy consulting, right? I'm sure some of the people in this audience are thinking about that as a career as well. Which do you weigh better, like given a choice between consulting or banking?
Yeah, I would say, again, like I've done none of these things, right? And so just Brian's an engineer, like has not like got through that like trajectory. I would say like the skill sets are different, right? And so you end up finding different roles. If you were to force me to compare, I think consultants have more options in a startup than investment banking, just like number of roles, right, that are available in consulting. And then I would say for VC, investment banking might be better for VC than consulting. I'm not sure. I'm just making things up now.
Got it. All right. I know we do have last 5 minutes, so I see 2 questions here. Those are probably like the last 2 questions we'll take. From Jason. Oh wait, sorry, I missed the one by Tony. So last 3 questions. Tony asked, how many founders should a team start with when developing an idea? I think there's no fixed number. There's probably like stats saying like 2 or 3 is like the most, optimal, but really you can start with any founder, right? What's your take on that, Brian?
Yeah, same. Like you can start with any number of founders. It's way harder to find founders than it is to start a company. And so I would just say like start, right? And then you can find your founders like along the like search journey.
All right. Jason has a question on like, how do you choose an industry to build a startup if you have no idea what problem in particular you want to solve?
Yeah, go find problems. Like you have to run it. Go live life, go like, I don't know, travel, right? Or like try new things or talk to your friends, go work at a company, then you'll realize banks suck and databases suck and like no code sucks and everything in the world sucks. And so yeah, just expose yourself to a lot of new things and you'll be able to find new problems. Right.
The next question is, how should VC firms promote DEI investing without limiting their opportunities to only minority-owned businesses and sustainable business?
Yeah, I'm new to VC, but I like it's already starting. So a lot of VCs also have to raise money, right, from like endowments and institutions, all that kind of stuff. And all of them are like, okay, cool. They have like diversity like scores now. And all of this is like really good. I think it's really good for the industry in general. So I think the answer is this change is already happening. How do you specifically promote it? I think what's happening right now is great, which is like the money. If I want to be a successful VC firm, I have to raise money, and part of the requirements of raising that money is to be diverse, and they have like scorecards for these things. So yeah.
To add on that as well, like I think basically your GPs could be diverse, or you could invest in that, or like I guess invest in startups that are working on diverse space, or you could invest in like your founders are being diverse. So there are different metrics to it. So I think you are not really like limiting your options, but yeah, there's a lot to consider there. All right, last question is, how did your engineering background help with initial voyages into the startup space?
Yeah, okay, this one's, I mean, in the initial days, I coded, right? So it's just hard to find engineers. So I end up like coding stuff, and it's fun. I love coding. Basically, after the initial prototype, you stop coding because you like raise money and then your job basically switches. The best thing that the engineering degree does for you is you can call BS on other engineers, right? So they're like, this feature is going to take like this long. And you're like, why is it going to take that long? Like, can't you just do like this? And they're like, I don't know. So you start these conversations. But yeah, I think a lot of people I'm actually not that technical, but a lot of people who aren't as technical will just, you do whatever the engineer says, right? This is gonna take this long, whatever. But now there's like a dialogue, and so yeah, the engineering degree helps with the dialogue.
Yeah, I mean, probably like know enough to make sure you're not being cheated on.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Okay, so we do have 2 minutes, but I think Tony's last question.
Okay.
Would you recommend working in industry before founding a startup? I think we talked through this a number of times.
Yeah, I think I would. The answer for me is yes. It's just I think it's much easier. I think it's just like easier stepping stone, right? Like you go into startup, there's some best practices. It's also a massive community, right? Like all the Uber people who work together end up like investing in each other and like doing all this stuff. And so I think it's an easier stepping stone to work somewhere and then go do your thing. I mean, the other option is also fine. Like if you have something that you really want to solve right now, you're like dying to do it, just do it. Never hurts.
All right. Yep. I mean, that's it for all the questions. I mean, thank you, Brian. Like you were super helpful. Anthony, I'm sure like everyone loves you. They definitely gain a lot of insights from this session. I know Serena is going to have like the second part of the class, so feel free to drop anytime now. For the rest of the students here, I mentioned earlier that I attended one of the talks by Felicis Ventures, and it's also very, very helpful. So I would share the link with Serena so you guys can watch it. It is focused around, I guess, founder market fit, which addresses a lot of the questions here as well, and just supplements your understanding towards what good founders need to, and how to get fundraised and stuff like that. So I'll share with Serena the link later, and hopefully she'll just like announce in B quarters. All right, thank you, Brian.
Take care, guys.
Yep,
Bye.
I will also hand it over to Serena then.
Yes, thank you, Brian, and thank you, Gerald.
Yep. All right, I'm going to drop as well. See you guys. And I mean, you guys probably heard me from last session, so reach out to me anytime if you need anything on Discord and stuff like that. All right, see you guys.
Okay, thank you, Gerald.
All right.
And then we will move on to logistics, and then it will be great if Jane, if you want to share the screen with the class. Yes. So here are the logistics for this week. I mean the following next week. So our week 3 assignments 1, 2, and 3 is due today before class. So please turn in them as soon as possible if you haven't done so. And if you turn in your homework late, it will be deducted some points. Depends on how late you turn in your assignments. And then there are 2 assignments that is due next Thursday before class. The first one is finalizing the project group that you need to find your project group. And the maximum number per team is 6. So you can form your own group. And then if you want to work on the project by yourself, you can write a note on the shared sheet. So more details could be found on B course. Another assignment is also due before class next Thursday, which is research, that we basically ask you to do your own individual research based on your team's selected problem. And then you don't need to provide any potential solutions yet. You only need to make research on the selected problem. And you can do a quote or find some data from the internet, but please make sure to explain on that and then provide a proper citation. Next slide, please.
So here's today's attendance form.
I have also shared the link and the secret word via the chat box. And then please don't leave yet because we still have a few information and then activities for you guys.
I see multiple answers on the Google form, so we'll move on to the next. Is there any questions so far?
Yes, does anyone have any questions? Okay, so I saw a question. Hey, friend, can we connect with Brian on LinkedIn? That's a good question. Let me write down the question and ask Brian. And then if he said yes, I will share the link. Actually, may people raise their hand if they want to connect with Brian? I just want to see how many people are interested. Oh, okay, we have a lot. Yes, I will email him, and then if he says yes, then I will send his LinkedIn profile via an announcement. Okay, it says we need permission to access the form. Are you logging to your Berkeley email account? It probably needs your Berkeley email account, but meanwhile, let me just pull out the attendance form just to make sure. Okay. Give me 1 second. Okay. Right. Okay, so the Google form is good because we are still accepting responses. May you try to like re-log in and probably use your Berkeley email? And then Tina asked a question, so are we forming our own groups or will help us form based on our response? You will need to form your own group. So if you read the announcement that I'm opening a few office hours this week and also next week. So for today, after class, I'll stay around an hour. So to create breakout room, if you guys want to break the ice, then you can find your own team. And if you want to work on your project by yourself, that is okay as well. And then another few ideas that you can help you to form a group is maybe you can send a message under the sub channels of our course channel under the Discord, and then to see if someone that is interested in working with you, or yes, that. And then the share sheet that I sent from that is due this week is that we make votes, right? If you see any ideas that you're interested in, you can feel free to reach out to that person directly. When do we know which projects are voted the most? Okay, so that assignment is due today before class. I will release the result by tonight. Yes. Did I miss any questions?
Serena, and what was the reason for voting then? I thought it would narrow down the projects and then we will just sign up for whichever are voted for.
That is one of our assignment that is due today before class. So you will need to choose your top 3 favorite problems among all your classmates' problems except your own ones. And then we'll announce the top 10, but just for your reference, to let everyone know like which are the popular ones.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Did I miss any questions? And then feel free to unmute yourself if you have any other questions. Anton asked a question: if we found a problem idea that is very similar to others, I guess, is that what you meant? How do we go about joining force with the author? Is that info on because do you mind unmute yourself and then say more about your question?
Yeah, I think you've already, oh, sorry, for some reason my camera is not really functioning. I think you've already addressed it. Basically, we just reach out to them directly. I found someone whose idea is basically the same. Let me see their name. The name is Joshua Ferrufino. Basically, same idea. So we should probably work together. And I was wondering, how do I reach out to them?
Yeah, feel free to reach out to each other, because like you can form your own group, right? But the maximum number is 6. In case if there's a special circumstance, we want to keep the maximum number as 6. Yes. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, I guess we can move on. Oh, sorry, one last question. Where's the survey for participation? You mean the attendance? I will resend the attendance form via the chat box. And then next slide, please. So once again, we have this feedback form, and then we encourage you to fill out this if you have any suggestions for us, and then we will try to address each. Do you say that there was a homework due today after class? I didn't say there's a homework due after class today. There are 2 homework assignments due next Thursday before class. Can you put the Discord link in the chat again? I think a lot of people, yes, I can. Give me 1 second. I can send the invite link via the chat box. So when you enter the Discord, that's the overall DECODE organization. And then please private message me, and then I will add you to the sub channel, which is designed for our class only. And then please ask all the questions regarding the class via that sub channel. Yes. Next slide, please. So here we have breakout rooms. For rest of the time, we want you to break the ice, and then I'm gonna just randomly assign breakout rooms. And then you guys can continue break the ice, or if you want to work on the project, you guys are feel free to do so. And then please let me know if you already find a group so I can put you guys together as one breakout room.